it sounds like it's minimizing the pain, right?
They actually cared so much that as soon as I showed them the marks on my shoulder, they went to the bishop immediately.
How did you recover from that? And how did you find Christ through that whole experience?
Let me tell you how I was able to come back and what I hold on to.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sword and Spirit. I'm your host, Daniel Sorensen, and today we are going to be interviewing our co-host. We're going to be interviewing Tori Porrotti. Tori, thanks so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me yet again for 5 episodes now.
Yep, 5 episodes. We've got a lot more filmed, and we're also excited just to release every week. And we wanted just to do our host episodes pretty early on, so we could hear both of our stories and to just let people know who we are. So before we get started a little bit, Tori, for people that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, just so people understand who you are. Tell me a little bit about just yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to make this really brief. I'm Tori. I'm originally from New York. I moved to Utah when I was 8, so I really should say I'm from Utah, but I don't. I'm currently studying international relations at BYU. I am a sophomore there. I am also, in terms of the church, I help missionaries answer questions and kind of mostly boost their morale, I'd say, just make sure they can keep going another day, because that's kind of the hardest part of a mission. Speaking of missions, I am a return missionary. I've been back for 6 months from the Dallas, Texas West mission. And my Spanish from that mission, it's still with me. We'll see how long that lasts, though.
That's awesome. So you've been home for 6 months. Where are you going to school?
I'm going to BYU.
Okay, nice. And what specifically are you studying there?
International relations.
Okay. What made you decide that you want to do that? Was it something on your mission or?
I guess maybe a little bit of my mission, because I was assigned to speak Spanish in the States, that's not easy, guys. But I would probably argue it was just this intro class I took, just for general, and I fell in love with it. And I liked it a lot more than I did my previous major, which was computer science.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Well, thanks, Tori, for introducing yourself. And we'll go ahead and just jump right in. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about Tori's story. A few weeks ago, for our first episode, we heard my story, but today we want to focus purely on your story. You've kind of told us a little who you are. So let's talk a little bit about your upbringing in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then I'll let you just kind of take the reins. You can go forward of just telling, how you found Christ. So, take it away. Let's talk about your background in the church.
Yeah. So as I said, my family's from New York, and moving to Utah was a little bit of a culture shock in terms of both the church and then outside. I don't think anyone really needs an explanation as to why. If you think about New York and then Utah, it kind of makes sense. But my parents were always faithful. However, you know those like jokes and whatnot, or those memes where it's like waiting for your mom to stop talking after Relief Society, and you're just like, the kid's just like dying. Mm-hmm. That was not my mom. We were just out of there immediately. We would do the 2 hours that we're done. And most of our worship and gospel stuff was focused at home. However, life within the church wasn't always easy. I had a primary teacher when I was 9 that was not very kind to me. It suffices me to say that my shoulder's still a little bit messed up because of that. And I'm okay. But it's been over a decade, so I'm okay. But of course, just kind of kept escalating. And again, it's nothing that my parents did wrong. They were great throughout everything. It's just life happens, and people are sometimes just awful human beings. Mm-hmm. And part of that is just part of mortality. And I had to learn from a really young age, like, why we go to church or why we do the things we do. Because just saying, oh, you need the sacrament, or, oh, it's good to socialize, that doesn't really help someone in those situations. You have to kind of figure out why, and I'll go into that in a little bit.
Sure.
And then, of course, I became a teenager. And Daniel, after your story, I will say you were a better teenager than I was, because literally by all accounts, I probably should have left the church entirely because let's see here. So I had the primary trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
I identified as bisexual as a
Okay.
teenager. So that was kind of hard to grapple with as like a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
I thought that I was beginning to think the church was a cult because of the temple,
Okay.
and I told people that, and I was really struggling with that. Just like, hey, why can't we know these things? Because I was always curious as well, which
Sure.
of course is both a benefit and a detriment in some cases. Because it's great to learn, but when you don't have the patience and want the answers right now
Mm-hmm.
in life, when you can't always get the answers right now, that's hard. And that was hard for me, especially when I was like this teenager trying to figure out life who didn't really have like a concept of time or patience or any of that.
I see. So you talked you were talking a little bit about how when you were a teenager, you want the answers kind of right now, which is I think very common in people around our generation. Anyone that's specifically millennial or Gen Z age, where they're surrounded more so than others around like social media, which I think has caused people to be like, I need answers within a few seconds, quick and a quick Google search. So when you talk about like the temple, for example, was it like the element of like the endowment, or was it just that you found cultish because people didn't talk about it, or was it just kind of the culture of like, oh, the temple's sacred, so we don't really talk about anything? What exactly was the issue there?
I would say more the latter, because turns out we can actually talk a lot about the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like this I think it's a more of a cultural thing where it's just like we can't even talk about the prayer circle or like that it even exists.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of like what I was coming across with. And again, not from my parents, just like from people outside. My family was great. I don't know how they lived with me. But it was just kind of like the whole sacred equals secret, and ergo we can't talk about anything.
Okay.
That is kind of what just gave me alarm bells in my head. And I was also overly political at the time, as well as most teenagers are. And it was during a time like with COVID, with the 2020 election, when like all these things are happening, that people were like, hang on, there's something weird going on here. Like people are hiding things. And I think just because I was a kid, I couldn't always separate the two mentalities, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And so I applied like what's going on with like bureaucracy or whatever the heck 2020 was. Excuse me. And I applied it to my religion, which is not smart. When you take politics or any other outside source and then morph your religion to try to follow what you think should happen, it's just a disaster. Without fail, no matter what you believe.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So,
You think that's not good.
so during this time, you had this like assumption that the church was cultish by partially maybe due to certain assumptions you had about the temple, and also the cultural mindset of we shouldn't be asking these kind of questions. So therefore, the church is a cult, or we're not able to talk about these things. It's a cult. So how did that kind of influence your approach to the gospel or your testimony of the gospel?
It was really funny because not haha funny, but it is a kind of interesting when you ask that, because I kind of had to rely on like this thread I had when I was a kid, right? It's like, we don't go to church for XYZ, we go to church for two reasons. And for me, that was the gospel of Jesus Christ and the plan of salvation. And it was like, with those two, I'm like, I can't handle anything else. Sure, I'll go to church. I hate it, but I'll go because I make a covenant with God that I would. Just holding on to that is kind of what made me like kind of like get past that initial barrier.
Sure. So there's something you said I want to kind of highlight a little bit. So you said that you made a covenant with God, so you're going to go, but you say you don't want to go. Talk to me a little bit about that. What caused you not to want to go to church, to interact with members? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Trauma. Like when you're no kid should be afraid to go to primary because they're afraid of their teacher hurting them. And again, my parents were wonderful. I'm going to just keep saying that because I don't want people to think, oh, they didn't care at all. They did. They actually cared so much that as soon as I showed them the marks on my shoulder, they went to the bishop immediately to try to get a release and try to get me out of there. And the bishop said no. And he said no because, like, she's a good member. She's a good person. No, that she didn't do this, even though we had evidence that she did.
Of course.
And it actually went up to the stake level, which I only found out kind of recently. And so they did everything they could. But sometimes leaders fail. And it sucks. But as for not wanting to go to church, I think it was just like as a trauma response.
Okay.
But it's more of like the opposite of, hey, I'm not losing my relationship with God that I already have that like kept me going.
Yeah, it's like kind of when we talked to Jennifer Roach Lees about abuse a few weeks ago, where she talked about how this person took so much away from me. They're not taking away my relationship from God. Is kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the other things too is, you know, what you described, I think, is what a lot of people may be experiencing, or a lot of people may have experienced some form of abuse, real hurt in the church, whether it be through family situations, or whether that be through organizations, or unfortunately even church leadership, like whether it be primary presidents, bishop, whoever it is. It's awful. How did you? But so I guess my question is, how did you get over that? Because a lot of people, they say, I was damaged so much, I can't go back. I can't go back to that. How did you recover from that, and how did you find Christ through that whole experience?
I think for a lot of people who are that damaged, they need to go to therapy. They need to get extra help. I think that is very important. I was fortunate in my own situation because I was a child and my mom was a therapist.
Okay.
So I had her to talk to, and she kind of knew what she was doing without like dragging me places like, oh, you must clearly be traumatized. Let's take you somewhere. She kind of just dealt with it. And that worked for me. And I think something I've noticed in my life, because I mentioned, I gave you a whole list of reasons, and we could talk about all of them. That was like, wow, how did you not leave the church? We could talk about that. We've probably got time. But one of the things that I've just noticed throughout my life is that, hey, I have this trial, and it sucks, right? No one likes it. No one wants to deal with it. It sucks, but it happened. But what I've noticed is that I've been put in places where that trial, or whatever the heck I went through, has allowed me to help someone else feel comfortable in church, or like follow their Savior, no matter how that might look like. If you'll oblige me sharing a story from my mission.
Go ahead.
So it's my last area, and we were talking to the sweet family from Guatemala. It turns out they're inactive members. You know the drill, right? And they're talking, and we're just talking, and I mentioned the priesthood once. So, like, mom is in it, is very interested. Their two daughters, 10 and 13, they're interested. Dad was always, like, trying to hide or wasn't really present. It was always hard for him to get into a lesson. But I'm talking about the priesthood, right? I'm like, hey, do you have any questions? And he eventually just, like, opened up and told us how their family used to be in a branch that was apparently so bad that the missionaries were pulled out and the branch was completely dissolved. I don't know the story of what happened there. I don't want to know the story of what happened there. That sounds like trauma with a capital T. But what I did know is that it was causing him pain, because he saw things that he should not have seen. And because of my own experience, I was able to connect with him and be like, hey, I get it. This doesn't help anyone. It sucks that people did that. Let me tell you how I was able to come back and what I hold on to. And it was what I told you earlier. It was, gospel, plan of salvation. That's pretty much it. And it, of course, took time and work, but they eventually did start coming back to church. But that was kind of like the catalyst, just like someone going, hey, I get it. I'm sorry. Instead of someone just saying, oh, yeah, the church is true, but the people aren't perfect, which is true. But it feels dismissive to a lot of people as well.
It's sounds like it's minimizing the pain, right?
Exactly. It's a platitude, and platitudes are just worthless.
I I love that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think it relates to a lot of people maybe feeling or experiencing that there is hope to come back. There is joy to be found. The person, the organization, or the people that may have hurt you doesn't have to destroy your testimony. And I love that. And for you, I want to kind of go into that. For you, I want to go into that a little bit more. Of you were able to find answers, or peace and hope, through kind of those dark moments in your life. And for people that are struggling with that specifically, for example, like abuse, okay? People that have been abused in one way or another, they feel oftentimes that there's no hope. They feel that oftentimes that if the church were true, that would exactly. What would you say to people like that have this assumption, an understandable assumption, but this assumption nonetheless, that if the church was true, God would not allow people in leadership positions, or just people in general, to hurt his children?
I think a lot of it just depends on the person. I'm going to go two routes with this. First up, you can always use the scriptures. Because we see a lot of people in church leadership in the scriptures that are not great people or have done some crazy things, especially in the New Testament. Old Testament too, but unfortunately it's just part of human nature. People get power, they get power hungry, and then they go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to abuse that power. That's just kind of what we do as people. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. For me, with a lot of my concerns and assumptions and whatnot, it was just looking for more answers. For example, just finding Travis Anderson's discussions, for example, when I was preparing for my mission. That was instrumental in helping my faith, because it made a lot of things just kind of click for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of able to get over those hurdles I had as well.
Yeah.
Or finding Jennifer Roach's work as well. That's another way of saying, because for her, it's not like, you can tell that she's not minimizing it, if that makes sense.
Sure. She's not being, the accusation that she refers to, is an abuse apologist for the church. It's
right.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's just, I think the main thing is just time.
Mm-hmm.
Just hang in there, and if you can't go to church yet, that's okay. That really is okay. Try to nurture your relationship with God, because he will guide you back to where you need to be.
I love that. And then another question I had is for members like myself. I've never personally dealt with that kind of situation. I know people that have, but it's, I think, a very valid concern. So like with parents or friends that maybe have not necessarily experienced abuse or trauma before, how can we as members best help people that are in those ruts, that are really struggling and that have PTSD or trauma? What can we do to help people?
And I think it's kind of how you kind of help anyone, really. Because I have breaking news for you all. I haven't gone through everything that you can go through. And there are just things that I know of, things that have happened, horrible things that have happened to people. I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that wasn't me. As awful as that is to say. But what I can do is, a lot of people try to provide solutions. These people are not looking for solutions.
Sure.
Like, solutions are great, but they want to feel heard. And that's just kind of what I've learned just throughout my life, most of all, with anything. Most of all, people just want to feel heard and understood. Okay. And I think a lot of times we are too hasty to just be like, oh, church is true, but people aren't, or, oh, just read and pray about it, you'll figure it out, or just fill in the blank here, or you're a child of God, he loves you. Like, that's great. But you can understand something intellectually and not feel it emotionally, if that makes sense, or spiritually.
Sure.
There is a disconnect sometimes, and that's okay. But if you want people to understand those messages that they've heard throughout their entire lives, especially if they're like lifelong members, the best thing to do is just do what the Savior did. He showed them compassion. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm the Son of God. Just follow me, and you'll be fine," and then like walk off. When they were mourning, he mourned with them. When they were struggling, he was with them. He gave them his shoulder to cry on. He took care of them that way, because the lessons could come later. They needed his presence there now.
I love that. There's an analogy I've heard. I remember, I believe it was in my cognitive psychology class where
It would be.
where there was a video our teacher showed us, or my professor showed us, that was titled "It's Not About the Nail," where there's an underlying issue when someone says the church hurt me, or when they say the church is true, Joseph Smith is a false prophet. Generally, there's an underlying issue. In my philosophy of religion class, there's usually maybe their approach that they go from. It's usually not the Joseph Smith's failed or fulfilled prophecies. A good friend of mine that doesn't believe in God has one of the things that he has told me is, he said, it doesn't matter how many prophecies of Joseph Smith were fulfilled or how many people he raised from the dead, or that he supposedly raised from the dead. You cannot prove to me that God exists through scientific evidence.
It's the fact that God doesn't exist. That's the problem.
Yeah. So, for example, he's what people call a strong evidentialist, which is that he needs public and testable reasons and not private and personal. And we're not going to go into it. Or we're not going to go into it too much. We'll talk a little bit about this in the future with an interview we have with Blake Ostler, who's a Eliot's philosopher. But that specifically, usually there's an underlying issue. It's not this one or done thing. It's how they approach things. Something inside them is hurting. There's a prominent critic of the church where he is very angry, very, very angry at the church oftentimes. But I think deep down, he's hurting. He misses the community that he used to love. He feels an absence of self. Usually when people leave, they feel empty. They feel like they've been betrayed because their whole life this is what they felt like. I feel like that's kind of what you've been describing is people experience things, and usually it's underlying. Usually it's an underlying issue, and we need to listen to figure out what those issues are and not try to fix it. Fix the issues is my understanding of what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm. We need to hear them, not the problem.
Awesome. Tori, I love this. This has been very insightful. We are running a little bit low on time, but I would love for you to get at least a few more thoughts, if not one more thought in. For specifically, what would you say to people that may be struggling with their testimony through external factors such as abuse, someone hurting them? What would you say to someone that is struggling?
I gave you my laundry list of my issues. Most of them have been resolved, if not all of them. It just takes time, and hang in there. You'll be okay. Do what you need to do to heal. God is with you every step of the way.
Tori, awesome. I love this. This has been very helpful, and thank you for your final thoughts. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. This has been another great episode of Sword and Spirit. This is episode 5. We're very happy for your support and helping us grow this channel to reach people that may be struggling through faith crisis, through abuse, through addiction, whatever it may be, and also tackling tough questions. Please tune in next week, and we're excited to have a scholar on next week. We'll be a little bit surprised, but I think you all will enjoy it. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.